Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience.
Welcome back to the Big LEZ'S League YouTube. Make sure if you haven't already to like and subscribe. Just passed 100 subscribers the other day, which was great. We only just started frequently using the YouTube, so great to see that that's starting to grow at a pretty decent rate. Obviously, if you haven't, as I said, if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, obviously follow the Instagram. The Instagram link is always in the description of our YouTube, so make sure you go and follow the Instagram, the TikTok, or on Spotify or podcasting platforms. So make sure if you haven't already, to go ahead and follow all of those. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the B teams for State of Origin, the B team for the Blues, the B team for the Maroons. The B team means the second grade team. So obviously we've had the two teams named, obviously gone through the squads already, done a number of segments talking about State of Origin, just had the Supercoach experience on Brandon Savage to talk a bit about Origin. So if you haven't seen that yet, make sure you go back. It's an hour of completely dissecting both sides. It is a great chat, so make sure you go back and have a look at that. But we're going to be talking about the guys that missed out. We already did the men that missed out. That podcast is on Spotify exclusively, so make sure you go and have a listen to that. But we're talking about who are the guys that really missed out. The B team is filled with guys that I really do think could have made this squad, or some guys that are going to be in and around the squad come the next few years, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years down the track. So let's have a look at these sides. We'll start off with the Blues. At fullback, you obviously got James Tedesco there. He's the next man up. You'd argue, or some would argue at least, that he should have been the fullback this season. James Tedesco, absolute freak player. He's probably been one of the better Origin footballers over the past few years, over the past 7 years that he's played. He's probably one of the better Origin players of the modern era as well, James Tedesco. Didn't really deserve to be cut out of this side, but the form of Dylan Edwards just had to push him out of the way. And at the end of the day, Dylan Edwards got the spot, so very happy for him. But James Tedesco, you'd have to imagine if Edwards does go down, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. But if Edwards does go down, James Tedesco gets that spot. Then the wingers. Now, I've gone for a roguey and I've gone for a bit more of an obvious one. The guy that I was going to put in there was Daniel Tupou. And the only reason I haven't put Daniel Tupou in there is because I've gone for a genuine left winger and I've gone for a genuine right winger. Now, the genuine left winger, I think, had to be in here over Daniel Tupou. And the right winger, I think, is a bit of a smoky. I thought I'd throw the curveball in there and see what you guys thought. I've obviously talked about him a little bit on my page as well. The guy that obviously that had to be there, the veteran, is Josh Adokar. He's been unreal in Origin over the past few years. Had to be there. He's the next guy up for me, at least, when they do have a few injuries. I'd argue, for morale-wise, he should have probably been included in this squad going into camp. The curveball I'm going to throw at you is Jacob Kiraz. His form has been outstanding. Him coming out of his own end has been outstanding, and I think he's a Blues player of the future. 200 and something meters per game. I think it's around 230, 240, his average. Coming out of his own end, he's a beast. Most of the meters he gains per game are kick return meters. He is an absolute freak. He's tackle bust galore. He really is, in my opinion, one of the next Blues players of the future, and probably a guy you might see debut either next year or the year after. Maybe even if there's a few injuries around the back line, or if the Blues don't go so well in game one, you might even see come in this year. Jacob Kiraz, I wouldn't even say he's a curveball. I'd say he's more of a smoky. Now, going into the centres, Latrell Mitchell was obviously the unlucky man to miss out there. What Latrell Mitchell can do in Origin is why you'd have him on this list. He's an absolute beast. He's come in and killed it in Origin every single time. He bleeds for that jersey, whether you think so or not. When he puts the Origin jersey on, he plays out of his skin. His best position is centre as well. So we get a chance to see him play in his best position and absolutely kill it. At centre as well, it's not like he's at fullback and he can sort of hide away in games as well. He tends to not get as involved when he's at fullback. At centre, there's pretty much nowhere to hide. The half can give him a lot of pill. It'd be Jerome Luai giving him a lot of pill there on that left edge, and he'd absolutely get heavily involved and kill it. He would be an absolute freak. You'd give it to him in the big moments, and he'd shine for you. Latrell Mitchell, I think, has to be the next man up. Jesse Raymond's the other guy that obviously was already in talks with Madge Maguire. Obviously didn't get the spot in the end after a big loss against the Panthers. Defensively, just wasn't that great in that game, and it was a pretty decent concern for him, when we're talking about selecting a guy like Jesse Ramian is his defense. You want a good defensive backline player. Is Suwali the best backline center? Probably not. He's probably not the best defensive guy you could chuck at center, and that's why it is a bit controversial that he's been picked there in the first place. But Jesse Ramian, he's the next man up. Some would argue Tony Staggs, obviously just coming back from an injury. I probably wouldn't have him in this conversation or in this team. He'd probably be in the C team, and we're not going to go that deep. So, Jesse Ramian, Tony Staggs probably just after him in the pecking order, but Tony Staggs, an absolute freak. Will Penasini is another guy that you could chuck in this list. Again, form has probably let him down a little bit. But yeah, look, there's some great centers coming through for New South Wales, and the future looks very bright. Now at 6, Cody Walker is my guy. I think that he's the next guy to come in to this squad. You've obviously already got Luke Keary in there. The fact that Luke Keary got picked over Cody Walker is a little bit controversial. The fact that Luke Keary got picked over maybe an Isaiah Katoa, who's our number 7, is a little bit controversial as well. But Cody Walker, for me, obviously should have been in the squad this year as a guy that can come in if there is injury. He's an absolute freak footballer. For Origin, he absolutely kills it. Got player of the match in last year's Game 3. I feel like should have probably been in and around the discussions. Even though his team's not going so great, his form has been great, and he's really tried to pull his team out of this cycle, especially over the past 2 to 3 weeks. Now, Isaiah Katoa is the number 7, next man up. I feel like, you can pick Luke Keary, you can pick whoever you want in the reserves here for the Blues. But the thing that troubles me the most about having Luke Keary in the reserves isn't really his head knocks. It's the fact that you've got all left side dominant halves in your spot or in your side. Hines has developed into a very heavy, and I think he does his best work on the left side. Yes, he does great work on the right, but he does do some pretty crazy things on the left-hand side as well. And I think it's a big reason as to why he was in discussions to be the 5'8" and not the halfback for the Blues this season. Obviously, Moses being the heavy discussion point at 7 for the Blues before the injury. You've got Cody Walker, who we've thrown in here. That's a left side dominant player. Jerome Luai, who's a left side dominant player. You've got Luke Keary, left side dominant player. Matt Burton, left side dominant player. Isaiah Katoa, in terms of the guys we have left, is really the only out-and-out right-side dominant player that you could bring into the halves that would do a job for you. Obviously, yes, you get a lot of these left guys that can do a decent job on the right, but this guy's played right all year, and he's been 3rd on the Dally M rankings this year. I think he's 5th or 6th now. He's still quite high on the Dally M list. He's 20 years old. He's taking a Dolphin side into the top 8, which we had no... we didn't think that this was going to be how the Dolphins would play this year. It's been off the back of some of his performances, some of his maturity. His maturity, obviously, over the past few weeks as well. He's been outstanding. I think that he really is, or should have been in the squad for the Blues, because he really is a player of the future. I can realistically see a world, and yes, we've still got Moses, we've still got Burton, we've still got Luai, we've still got a bunch of players to talk about for Origin, but if he continues this trajectory, 5 years down the track, I could see a halves pairing of Nathan Cleary at 6 and Isaiah Katoa at 7. I can see it because he's an absolute weapon. He's killed it over the past few weeks. He's on top of the Dally M rankings at 20 years of age. This is stuff even Nathan Cleary wasn't realistically doing. And yes, obviously, there's been a lot of things that have kept Nathan Cleary from winning the Dally M's, whether it be suspension or stuff like that, injury, stuff like that. But Isaiah Katoa, for me, is a guy that is generally in discussions, or genuinely, I should say, in discussions for a New South Wales jersey over the next 3 to 5 years, for sure. And I really do think that if another half goes down, if Hines goes down, and we get to Game 2, we're looking for some halves to fill in the reserves, I think that Isaiah Katoa gets called into camp. I really do. And especially if he continues this form line, Madge, I bet you has identified his maturity and his work ethic too on the field. I think that he's definitely a guy that's going to get a call up very, very soon. Now, going into the front rowers before we continue this long and hard rant over Isaiah Katoa. I like Stefano Utoikamanu. I had him starting over Jake Trbojevic in my New South Wales Blues predicted side before the sides came out. I just feel like what he offers and where football is going, or the type of football that's being played, the speed of Origin as well. I think Jake Trbojevic, yes, he's a great defender, but does he suit the speed at which Origin is played at? No, not really. And Stefano Utsikamanu, he does. He suits the game where it is right now and what the role of a front rower is right now. He's great in the second phase. He runs hard. He tackles really well. His defense has been quite decent this year. I feel like he deserved an Origin spot. For me, at least, I probably would have picked him over Spencer Leniu. Yeah, look, he's had some off games, in the middle of the start of the year and obviously a few weeks out from Origin. But I feel like what he can do for you in a side, I think he suits the style of play. I think he suits starting in this side with Payne Haas. Obviously not selected, so he is in our B team. But yeah, he's a guy that I would have had in that squad for sure. The other front rower that I think really realistically should have been picked over Spencer Leniu is Terrell May. Now, before you guys rip me in the comments about saying I would have picked a lot of guys over Spencer Leniu, I would have picked a lot of guys over Spencer Leniu because he's only played 4 or 5 games this season. Yes, it's because he's been out with suspension from what happened in Las Vegas, but he's only played 4 or 5 games this year, and he hasn't really blown out, or he hasn't really, been outstanding to the point where I'd go, fuck yeah, he's only played 4 or 5 games. I want him in my Origin side. I know what Madge is doing with this play here. You want aggression, you want a mongrel, you want someone that's the villain to come off the bench and really have an impact. But I think Terrell May earned that jersey over Spencer Leniu just with consistency throughout the entire year and making some really big plays. Obviously, the cutout pass to Daniel Tupou comes to mind in one of the Roosters games earlier on in the year. He's had some really big plays throughout the season that just, make him look like an Origin player. And again, he's just great in second phase. He suits this side. When he plays big minutes, he's an absolute weapon. So Terrell May for me would be the next guy in my B team. He starts in the front row. Now, the guy that missed out, the man that missed out controversially at number 9, Api Coruscant, is the 9 for me. He doesn't suit the side that they've named for the Blues at the moment. You want guys that aren't individuals in that team. You want a team that just lets Hines really direct the play. And everyone plays off the back of what Hines does rather than everyone making their own individual plays, having too many individuals, having too many stars in this side to the point where it just gets confusing and it just gets too chaotic and we make a ton of errors and give Queensland a lot of ball. It's just a side that is super simple and obviously plays off the back of Nico Hines. Api Coruscant doesn't suit that play structure and his defense, in the weeks leading up to Origin has not been great. So we can see why he missed out as well. He is in my B team, though. What he can do out of dummy half, very creative around the ruck. I think he suits this B team. And he's got definitely in my side. He's definitely the next man up because he has been attacking-wise in form. Keon Koloamatangi, this isn't just off a one performance, obviously, for South Sydney at lock forward last week. This is off just generally the type of player that he is. Obviously, an Origin player from last year, did an outstanding job. Didn't warrant really being dropped out of this side. Obviously, new coach, new direction. He came out due to form. But Keon Koloamatangi in the B side for me, when there's not too many back rowers when you look through the list. Obviously, they've taken a fair chunk of them. Hudson Young, Cam Murray's injured, so he's unavailable. Liam Martin, Angus Crichton, Hamoli Olakawatu already in the side. For the Blues, you've taken a fair chunk of back rowers and chucked them in this side. Not too much to pick from. Keon, though, he is left over. I am taking him. I'm also taking Tyson Frizzell. Coming back from injury, he's been outstanding. He's going to be playing, I think, middle forward for the Newcastle Knights over the next few weeks off the bench, which is going to be interesting to see how that goes. But he's an Origin player, Tyson Frizzell. Every time he's come in, he has really worked hard for that jersey. So he's another guy that I have in my team. Now, 13 might be a little bit controversial, obviously, from what has happened off the field. But I think this guy is an Origin player. And I think if we didn't have the indiscretions off the field, he would be in this side for Madge Maguire going into game 1. I have no doubt in my mind that Jack de Belin would have played Origin and played a lot of Origins by now if these off-field indiscretions hadn't happened. Jack de Belin, absolute weapon. Has killed it this year. Not a lot of people have talked about him because they're afraid to talk about him because of what's happened off the field, but he has been in form this year. He's been outstanding. He has been an absolute weapon. He has worked tirelessly for this Dragons side. his ball playing through the middle as a link man, his toughness whenever he runs the ball, generally runs over 100 meters a game, plays big minutes, and really puts 110% in for this Dragon side. I really do think he's a guy that deserves to be in this Blues team. And if it wasn't for the indiscretions off the field, he would be in this Blues team. And, go after me, say whatever you want about the guy. Not knowing the person and knowing the footballer, I'd have Jock DeBellin in my Blues team 100%. Now at 14, Mitch Kenny is in my B team here. Mitch Kenny, I feel like, is a bit of a smoky. Not a lot of people were talking about him in the discussion for number 9. I think he suits the current Blues team if you were to chuck him in there over Reece Robson. But Reece Robson, the thing with him is as well, you can have that hooker 1-2 punch where Cam McInnes eventually maybe goes into 9 and he plays a bit of lock and just runs hard, tackles hard in and around the field. It would make a little bit more sense if they had a number 9 off the bench that could come into that role. Since they don't, it's going to be interesting to see the rotation up to those two guys. But yeah, Mitch Kenny for me was in the discussion for sure for Origin. And just, it's not so much the big things that Mitch Kenny does. It's more of the little effort areas that he achieves for the Panthers week in, week out. I feel like he's definitely a guy that deserves to be in and around the conversation. In terms of the rest of my bench, I've gone Regan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Bolder. We talked about it in the preview for today's games. We talked about these two guys not really achieving to the heights that they should be this year. We know what they can do in Origin, though, and when you're picking a B team for Origin, these two lads deserve to be there. 15 and 16, Regan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Paulo. Now, I might get into a bit of trouble for this number 17 pick because he is in the squad for the A team. But I'm picking him anyway. Matt Burton, number 17. Yes, it's a bit rogue to go for Mitch Kenny and Matt Burton in the same team. I'm not copying scope here. I think it works. I think Matt Burton can play a roaming lock role. He can also come in and play a bit of back row. He's got the body shape and the running game for it. Great footwork at the line. Can run some great lines for his 5'8". On that left side. And the boot on last tackle as well is something that you really, don't want to be under one of those high balls. You don't want to be under those high balls that Matt Burton puts up. He's an absolute weapon. His defense has improved out of sight this year. It's something that not many people are talking about. His defense has been great. His kicking game has been solid. He just flicks the ball with his toe and it fucking goes 70 meters. So, Matt Burton for me, it's a road call, but, Origin has moved away from the big, tough guys off the bench. You want more mobile guys coming off the bench. You've got your two big boppers, Regan Campbell-Gillard, Junior Paulo. Have a guy like Matt Burton that can play a roaming role. Give some of these big boppers a spell that I've already got on my side. Utu Ikamanu, Terrell May, Jack DeBellin through the middle. Obviously, Matt Burton then can give one of those guys a break. Has a bit more leg speed through the middle of the park or on the edge, depending on where you want to put him. You can always put a Keon into 13. He'll do a job. We saw that last week for South Sydney. I think that Matt Burton would suit this sort of rotation that I'm going for this B team. The reserves are Scott Drinkwater, who obviously doesn't suit the style of play that the Blues are going for. If they were going for a zippy, bunch of individuals, bunch of stars sort of team, I think he makes it, to be honest, Scott Drinkwater. Maybe form-wise puts Dylan Edwards a little bit in front of him, but Dylan Edwards plays very similar to James Tedesco, except he doesn't get overly involved and he just plays off what his halves are doing a lot more than taking the ball too many times on too many occasions when it's not on. And that's the only flaw of James Tedesco, recently at least. I think that Scott Drinkwater, if they were going for that zippy style of play, they wanted a second 5'8" out there at fullback, he'd honestly have a Blues jersey on going into game one. Moses jersey number 19, obviously just come back from injury. I made this list knowing that Moses was coming back this week, but had him in the list anyway. A guy that I'd bring into camp regardless, just to test him out and see how he goes. But Moses definitely in this list. And Jacob Saifidi there in jersey number 20. Been there, done that before. Spare big bopper that if one of the big boys gets injured, he can come in and do a job in this side. Let's go and touch on Queensland's B team at fullback. There's not too many fullbacks to choose from. KP's injured. Jaden Campbell's injured. You've obviously got a lot of the other fullback choices out. The only guy really left, and this guy's currently injured as well, is AJ Brimson. The next play would be the more rogue play. You go for a Xavier Savage or a Dane Gagai there at fullback. But I didn't want to be too rogue in this podcast. So I've got an asterisk next to the name of AJ Brimson. I think that at fullback, he'd do a job. He's played there before. Yes, not in a winning Queensland side, but he's done a job in Origin before. He's done the old Michael Morgan where he sort of comes off the bench in a middle sort of role. He's actually played hooker for Origin before, which didn't really work out too well in a Kevy Walters side. But yeah, look, I mean, he's been in the Origin arena before. He's been in around the camp before. He's definitely in my B team. And it's not just because there's a lack of guys left. He'd probably be at centre for me in this B side. If, Callum Ponga was available, Callum Ponga would obviously be the fullback. But due to lack of guys available, I'm going AJ Brimson, and he's been unreal this year when he has played as well. So he'd be in and around that conversation anyway. In terms of the wingers, I've gone Corey Oates and Anari Chihuahua. Those are the only guys left. Cobbo's off the bench. They've gone for Murray Taulagi and Xavier Coates. Not too many other wingers that play for Queensland left here. And when you see my centres, I've sort of taken two wingers and chucked them in the centres. Or I've taken a winger and chucked him in the centres. Dane Gagai, obviously not a winger. Dane Gagai, one of my centres, though. I feel like I had him at least a little bit ahead of Murray Taulagi, just because Murray Taulagi has just come back from an injury. So is Dane Gagai. But Dane Gagai, for me, for the time that he's played, and maybe it is a little bit more than how long Murray Taulagi's played this season, has played better. So Dane Gagai would have probably been in this Queensland side, current Queensland A side, I should say, over Murray Taulagi, if that's the way that they were going, which is the way that they're going. But yeah, look, I've got Dane Gagai in the Beast team. I think that he is literally a sniff away. If a winger goes down, if a centre goes down, he's straight in. Xavier Savage, for me, is the other centre. Now, the only reason he's not on the wing is because he's not a right winger. He is a left winger, but you've already got Corey Oates there on the left wing. I think Xavier Savage comes in at centre. His ball playing a few times this year has been great. There's definitely plenty of areas where he can improve, and I think he's a length from making an Origin side. But due to lack of backline players here, I'm going with Xavier Savage. And Xavier Savage, as I said, ball playing is quite good. I like the way he roams as well. There's some stages for Canberra where he actually goes into more of a fullback role when they do their spread sets down that left-hand side, which really works well on most occasions. Just his speed and his footwork, his ball playing as well, with the experience that he has playing in that fullback sort of role. I really enjoy watching Xavier Savage play. I think he could kill it if he was chucked into the centres on a one-off game. So I've got him here in my B side as a centre. Now the halves. Sam Walker, Ezra Mam. Future halves pairing of Queensland. There, I said it. I think Tom Dearden transitions into a utility role. He takes over that hooker 1-2 punch that Ben Hunt's currently doing when Ben Hunt chooses to retire from rep footy. I think Sam Walker's the future. Yeah, not yet. Obviously not ready yet for Queensland for me. But very, very close. I feel like in the next 5 years, this will be the halves pairing. I don't think it's going to take that long. But I think by, the next 5 years, this will be the halves pairing. Sam Walker, Ezra Mam. These two playing Origin together would be a fucking nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Both of them doing their spread sets down the left as well. Sam Walker's footwork and kicking game. Ezra Mam just being an absolute weapon with whatever he does, being a great support player. His defense, some of the big hits he puts on, people forget about that, but his raw speed as well. If he gets a short ball off Sam Walker, he is away. This halves pairing is just going to be a nightmare for the Queensland Maroons going into the next few years. In terms of the front rowers, Christian Welch, Corey Jensen, two guys I probably would have chucked in the forward rotation over Selwyn Cobbo. Probably wouldn't have Selwyn Cobbo off the bench myself, but hey, trust in Billy Slater. I'm sure he's got a plan for Selwyn Cobbo. If he doesn't come in to the game, obviously, due to there not being any injuries, I think there's going to be a lot of Queenslanders scratching their heads, especially if Queensland go to lose that game too. The pitchforks are going to be out in that regard. But, look, I personally would have had a forward there, but if it works, it works. And obviously credit to Billy Slater because he's done a number of things that have worked in the past. I have got Reid Marnie at 9. I think that he is very close, maybe even a little peg over Tom Dearden if they really want to go for that hooker 1-2 punch and they want to keep Tom Dearden in the halves for the Origin side moving forward. I think that, Reid Marnie's a sniff, and I think that if there's an injury in that hooker position, if Harry Grant really does have the sniffles going into this Origin series, Reid Marnie's a sniff. He's a great player, lots of X factor. Obviously has a little bit of emotion, and I love a bit of emotion in State of Origin football. You want that from a player in State of Origin football. Big hits, great ball playing. He is a magician at a dummy half. I think that he is very close. I think over the next 5 years, he could even see his name in a 9 or a 14 jersey, depending on how they want to go with this hooker 1-2 punch. Dave Fafita, obviously the controversial out of state of origin here for the Maroons. Obviously, Felice Kafusi named over him. Selwyn Cobbo named on the bench over Dave Fafita. Big statement for Dave. I think he's in for a really huge, big next few weeks. I think that Dave Fafita is really going to take this hard, and I think he's going to play 10 times better than what he's playing at the moment over the next 2 weeks to get into that game 2 squad. And again, especially if Queensland don't win and this bench rotation with Selwyn Cobbo doesn't work, I really do think that Dave Fafita can come back into this team, and I'm sure he will. Bo Firma's a smoky for me. I think that he was a smoky. It was probably between him and Jermaine Hopgood for that jersey number 17. They obviously went for Jermaine Hopgood. But Bo Firma, he is an absolute weapon. Effort areas galore. Was in the squad for Queensland only 2 years ago before back-to-back ACL injuries, which really riddled him and obviously affected how he would stamp his legacy on Queensland. I feel like if he didn't do his ACL, imagine if Bo Firma didn't do his ACL, I think that he would be locked into Origin. I think he'd be locked in to that Queensland Maroons back row spot because he just is a weapon. He is such a good player. And I don't think you've seen the best of Bo Firma yet. I think that he has got another length to go to over the next few years, and I'm excited to see it. Maxi Plath, Max Psycho Plath, as they call him on Bloke, I think gets that 13 jersey for the B side. Weapon player, effort areas galore. It's what Billy likes out of his players when you're picking this Queensland team. The Queensland spirit, if you call it, is effort areas, and Max Plath just has a ton of those in his game. Defensively, great. Size probably lets him down a little bit, but I feel like, as I said, the game is moving towards a smaller, more mobile pack, and especially with the speed of Origin, how it's going to speed up over the next few years and how it already has, become a very fast game of football. I think that Max Plath would be suited to the style of play we play today. And I think that he would probably be in that discussion. Even guys at Bloke in a Bar had him in the squad for Origin, so that you know how highly regarded he is amongst a bunch of experts. I think Max Plath is really, really a player of the future for State of Origin. Yes, as I said, size probably lets him down a little bit as in terms of getting into this forward pack. But again, how you want to go with this hooker 1-2 punch? Billy loves a bold play. We know that because Selwyn Cobbo's on the bench going into game 1. So yeah, keen to see if he is in and around the squad over the next few years, and I imagine he will be, maybe even for game 2 or 3. Now, the Rogue 14. You saw the title of the podcast on Spotify, and you would have gone, the Rogue 14, what's he done here? What's Big Les going for? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going for. I'm going for Kurt Mann. I feel like he was a sniff for Origin game 1 this year. If he didn't get injured, I think that he'd really be a sniff. I think the Rogue play from Billy wouldn't have been Selwyn Cobbo. I think it would have been Kurt Mann in jersey number 17 because he's just a gun. Ball playing through the middle is great. I think that his running game as well, he's just the way he reads the game too, being in that lock forward role. Yes, he runs hard, he tackles hard, but his read of the game, his ball playing, as I said, through the middle, being that link man, he suits the Dogs. I think he suits the current style of play we play today again, and I think could really do a job. Yeah, it's not the hooker 1-2 punch, but in this sort of rotation, I think Maxi Plath probably gets time at hooker when Reid Marnie comes off the field and Kurt Mann goes into lock and just does an absolute cracker of a job. Kurt Mann's also a guy that can cover a bunch of injuries. Fullback in the centres, I think, as well. 5'8" halfback, hooker, can cover a middle forward sort of ball playing role. Back row if you really need him to, if you're desperate. He can cover pretty much 1-17, 1-13, I should say, if you need him to. He's a great 14 to have and probably one of the better 14s you'll ever see other than your Dylan Walkers and guys like that. And then the rest of the bench goes, and this is probably going to ruffle a few feathers. Josh Kerr, I've got in jersey 15. I even think is smoky for the current Queensland team too. I've gone Trent Liero in jersey number 16. I think he's been outstanding for Melbourne. Through the middle of the park, he's been great. And even in this new role, playing in the middle, he's killed it. Obviously more well-known for playing well in the back row for the Melbourne Storm last year. Craig Bellamy went for the bold call of putting him at 13, and he's killed it there. And then obviously just moved into a bench rotation role, and I think he's killed it there as well. So Trent Liero, I think a player of the future for the Maroons and a bit of a smoky over the next few years, especially if there is a few injuries around the forwards again. And then Tom McKaylee, there's not too many guys to pick from here. The next guy up probably would have been Francis Molo, just generally due to experience. Tom McKaylee, I think, can do a lot of things for you. Second phase, he's great. His running game is solid. Can play a bit of 13 as well. So Tom McKaylee is there for jersey number 17. The reserves are Brad Schneider. He's only just coming back from his injury 2 weeks early, so credit to him. Then I've got Alafiana Khan Pereira and Francis Molo on the reserves as well there. 2 guys that are players of the future. Francis Molo, as I said before, been there before. Alafiana Khan Pereira, an absolute freak of nature. Obviously dropped a few times this year, but super speedster. Obviously great as a finisher as well. And I think, as I said, if there's a few injuries, he comes in, he does a job. Defensively, definitely a few issues there that he needs to sort out before we put him into discussions. But, a player of the future, 100%, and I back it. So, there you go. Those are the B teams. Make sure, if you haven't already, to like and subscribe to the Big LEZ'S League YouTube. Make sure to go ahead and follow the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all podcasting platforms. We are on technically all of them. To follow the Instagram, Big LEZ'S League _, obviously starting again after getting hacked earlier on in the year. Let's get those numbers back up to where they should be. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.